They laughed at me because I carried plates, but they forgot I also carried dignity.
They say money can buy luxury, but it can never buy respect. In a crowded five-star restaurant, laughter erupted when a powerful Chinese billionaire mocked a young black waiter, his words sharp, his tone cruel. The room echoed with arrogance, until the waiter opened his mouth and answered back in flawless Chinese. What happened next silenced everyone. Stay with me till the end. This is one story you'll never forget. And hey, if you love powerful true stories, make sure to hit subscribe right now. The evening had just begun at one of the most exclusive restaurants in Shanghai. Expensive chandeliers glistened above polished tables, and the air carried the aroma of rare wines and imported dishes. This was not a place where ordinary people came to eat. It was where the wealthy came to flaunt their power. Among the crowd sat a Chinese billionaire, a man whose reputation was built on ruthless business deals and a love for attention. With a circle of influential friends gathered around him, he was the center of the spotlight. Every laugh, every nod, every clink of the glass revolved around him. For him, nights like these weren't just dinners, they were stages where he could display dominance. Working in the shadows of that glittering hall was a young black waiter. He had been assigned to serve the billionaire's table, moving carefully, politely, making sure every detail was perfect. He knew the type of men sitting there. Powerful, entitled, used to treating staff like background props. Still, he carried himself with quiet dignity. His uniform wasn't just fabric, it was armor. His eyes revealed discipline, his posture demanded respect. To the other guests, he was invisible, just another waiter, blending into the flow of service. But that night, fate had other plans. Two worlds, one of unchecked arrogance and one of silent resilience, were about to collide. And when they did, every person in that restaurant would witness something unforgettable. What began as a simple evening meal was about to turn into a lesson about pride, respect, and the power of unexpected strength. The billionaire leaned back, in his chair, swirling his glass of red wine as if the entire room belonged to him. His friends waited, hungry for the next story, the next display of his sharp tongue. That's when his eyes landed on the young waiter approaching with a tray of dishes. At first it was silence, just a calculating stare. Then, with a smirk curling across his lips, the billionaire spoke loudly enough for the entire table to hear. "Look at this," he said in Mandarin, pointing at the waiter. "A foreigner carrying plates in my country. Can he even understand? Thus? Or is he just here to smile and nod?" The table burst into laughter. Some slapped their hands on the table, others covered their mouths, pretending to be polite, but clearly entertained. The waiter, still professional, set the plates down, carefully. His face was calm, but his jaw tightened for just a moment, a tiny crack in his mask of composure. But the billionaire wasn't done. He leaned forward, his voice rising like a performer feeding off the crowd. "Tell me," he sneered again, in Mandarin, "how does it feel to serve people who will always be above you? Do they not have restaurants where you come from?" The insult stung sharper than broken glass. The laughter grew louder, echoing across the marble floor. Other guests at nearby tables glanced over, some shaking their heads, others whispering, but none dared to intervene. The power dynamic was clear. A billionaire mocking a waiter was entertainment, not injustice. And yet, in that boiling silence beneath the laughter, something was shifting. The waiter adjusted his tie, lifted his chin, and locked eyes with the billionaire. No trace of fear, no trace of submission, only resolve. What no one in that room expected was that the man they were mocking had been quietly preparing for this very moment. And when he finally opened his mouth to respond, the entire restaurant would stop breathing. The waiter's voice cut through the laughter, not loud, but sharp enough to command attention. In clear, flawless Mandarin, he replied, "Respect is not served on a tray. It is earned by the way we treat others." The words hit like a glass shattering on marble. Silence. Every chuckle froze halfway. Forks stopped mid-air. For a moment, the billionaire's confident smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. One of his friends broke the silence with an awkward laugh, trying to save face. "Wait, did the waiter just speak Mandarin?" The waiter didn't flinch. He stood tall, his eyes never leaving the billionaire. Around the room, heads turned, guests whispered to each other in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. Waiters didn't talk back. Waiters didn't humiliate billionaires in their own language. But the young man wasn't finished. He leaned slightly forward, his tone steady, his words deliberate. "You mock me because of my skin, because of where I was born. But tonight, you revealed more about yourself than you ever could about me." Gasps rippled across the dining hall. A woman at a nearby table whispered, "Did you hear that? He's fearless." The billionaire clenched his jaw, his pride bruised. He tried to laugh it off, raising his glass as if dismissing the insult. "So impressive. A parrot that speaks Mandarin, but let's not mistake language for class." Another twist. The insult hung in the air, heavier than before. His friends chuckled nervously, but their eyes betrayed discomfort. The balance of power was shifting, and everyone felt it. The waiter stepped closer, lowering his voice, forcing the billionaire to lean in to catch his words. "Class," he said firmly, "is not measured by wealth. It is revealed in moments like this." The billionaire's smile evaporated. His friends looked at each other, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. The crowd was no longer entertained, they were captivated. And just when the room thought the exchange was over, the waiter delivered one more line, calm but cutting. "You wanted to make me small tonight, but instead, you made yourself smaller." The billionaire's glass trembled ever so slightly in his hand. For the first time, he had no comeback. The room felt electric. Every guest was frozen between disbelief and awe, eyes darting from the billionaire to the waiter. The man who was used to owning every conversation suddenly found himself cornered by nothing more than truth, spoken in his own language. The billionaire's face flushed crimson. His pride had been pierced in public, and his empire of arrogance was crumbling in front of his audience. He slammed his glass down on the table, the wine trembling at the rim. "You dare insult me?" he barked in Mandarin, his voice booming through the hall. But the waiter didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply stood there, hands steady at his side, his calmness louder than the billionaire's rage. Guests leaned forward in their chairs, hearts pounding as though they themselves were on trial. One of the billionaire's companions whispered nervously, "Enough, let's just eat." But it was too late. The moment had spiraled into something bigger. This wasn't just a dinner anymore, this was a battle of pride, and the whole room was watching. The waiter's eyes never broke contact. He had the billionaire's full attention, and with it, the silent support of every witness in the restaurant. He was about to speak again, to deliver the line that would either shatter his dignity forever or turn the tables in a way no one could ever forget. The entire room leaned in, breath caught in their throats. You could hear the clink of a fork falling 2 tables away, the rustle of a dress brushing against a chair. And then, just as the billionaire opened his mouth to unleash another insult, the waiter took a single step closer, his voice steady, his words ready. What he said next would change everything. The billionaire's chest rose and fell with anger, his knuckles white against the edge of the table. He was a man who had silenced rivals in boardrooms, who had crushed competitors with the flick of a pen. But in this moment, against a waiter's quiet defiance, he found himself powerless. The waiter's next words came like calm thunder, quiet but shaking the ground beneath every listener. In flawless Mandarin, he said, "You see wealth as power. I see respect as priceless, and that is why you will never truly be rich." The line sliced through the air. Guests gasped, some even covering their mouths in shock. A woman whispered, "Did he just say that to him?" Others stared in stunned silence, their eyes darting between the billionaire's rage and the waiter's unshaken composure. The billionaire tried to laugh, but his voice cracked under the weight of humiliation. "Do you know who I am?" he barked, pounding his chest. "I built empires, I employ thousands. He jabbed a finger at the waiter. "You carry plates. Don't you dare lecture me." But before he could continue, the waiter stepped forward and, with measured precision, delivered the final blow. "You built empires," he replied, "but tonight you couldn't even build respect for yourself. And while you see me as a servant, I see myself as a man. That is something no amount of money can buy." The room erupted. Not in laughter this time, but in applause. First it was one table, then another. Slowly a wave of clapping filled the hall until the billionaire was drowned in the sound of respect, not for him, but for the man he tried to humiliate. The billionaire's face darkened, his pride in tatters. For the first time in memory, no one wanted to laugh at his joke. No one wanted to follow his lead. His friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding his gaze, embarrassed by their own earlier laughter. The waiter bowed politely, not out of submission, but out of grace. His dignity intact, his respect earned not by shouting, not by violence, but by courage and wisdom. He turned and walked away, his back straight, leaving the billionaire drowning in silence. The billionaire reached for his glass, his hand trembling. He tried to raise it as if nothing had happened, but the weight of the moment was too heavy. His empire, his wealth, his fame, all meant nothing in a room that had just witnessed his downfall. And for everyone who watched that night, one truth burned in their minds. Respect doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to those who live with integrity, even when standing alone. When the waiter walked away, he carried no riches in his pocket, no spotlight on his name, and no power in the traditional sense. Yet in that moment, he walked taller than the billionaire who sat drowning in silence. Why? Because he held something money could never buy: respect. The billionaire had wealth, status, and influence, but he lacked humility. He used his privilege to belittle others, mistaking fear for admiration. The waiter, on the other hand, had none of the billionaire's fortune, but he had courage, discipline, and the wisdom to speak truth when it mattered most. That night proved a timeless lesson. Dignity doesn't come from what you own. It comes from how you treat people. The waiter's simple, powerful words turned humiliation into triumph, proving that respect is the greatest currency in the world. Empires can collapse, fortunes can vanish, but the strength of character never fades. And think about it. How many times in our lives do we laugh along with the crowd, ignoring the injustice in front of us? How many times do we stay silent, letting arrogance win? But sometimes all it takes is one voice, steady, fearless, to remind the world that real power is not in wealth, but in wisdom. So the next time you feel small in front of someone richer, louder, or more powerful, remember this story. Remember the waiter who stood his ground and spoke with the kind of strength no billionaire could match. Remember that your value is not determined by their opinion. It is determined by your integrity. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of the importance of dignity and courage, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the strength of the human spirit. And let's build a community that values respect above riches and character above arrogance, because at the end of the day, the world will not remember the man with the loudest laugh or the biggest wallet. It will remember the one who had the courage to stand tall even when everyone else tried to push him down. So ask yourself, who do you want to be remembered as?